All right, everyone. I've got 1 o'clock on my clock, so let's get going. Welcome to the Prevent Child Injury webinar on how to repurpose content to support your social media strategy. I am Katrina Boylan, Senior Research Writer at the Center for Injury Research and Policy at Nationwide Children's Hospital. And my co-host today is Katie Donovan, Digital Communications Specialist, also at CERP, and also our PCI coordinator. So if you're receiving emails from us, Katie is sending those. Today, we're going to show you how you can remix content from pretty much anywhere to match whatever your needs are. You know, we are all busy and we only have so much time to devote to content creation. So we wanted to show some easy ways to generate different types of content from materials that already exist. So specifically, we're going to cover how to turn text into visuals, how to turn single images into things like a carousel, how to create videos and reels from images, and then how to turn current events into content. And so Katie and I are going to take turns with a mix of slides and live demonstrations. And so if questions come up, or if you'd like us to stop and show you something again, feel free to drop those questions and comments into the chat, and we're going to keep an eye out for those. And we should have time at the end for questions as well. And so I know many of you will want to watch this again. And so we are recording this video on YouTube, and Katie will, we are sharing this video on YouTube, and Katie will send out that link when it's ready. Okay, let's get into it then. So just to set the stage a bit before we get into these demonstrations, if you are running social media of any type, including your own, we do highly recommend that you're using a graphic design app or software of some type. The platforms themselves do have some tools, but doing work ahead of time before you pull those things into your social media channel will just create a more polished, accessible final product. And so we use Canva, like many of you, and there are tons and tons of apps of software out there. I know Sprout Social has some good tools. I'm using Snapseed on my phone. But even the native camera apps have gotten good at putting together images, video, adding, different like stickers and things of interest for social media. Just also, if you are using Canva and want more tips on how to do all of this, we do have several webinars on Canva best tips over on our CERTC YouTube channel, and I'll put a link to those things at the end as well. All right, so second point here, which is up, is considering using AI if you can, artificial intelligence. Even the free version of ChatGPT can help you come up with ideas for social media posts and generate text. Now, it does depend on whether or not you will be allowed to do this. We have permission to use it for certain purposes, but not for others. So again, only if you're permitted to do this. Now, image generation still does tend to be a little bit lacking on the free version, especially of ChatGPT. But depending on what you're looking for, you might be able to create something that's useful in ChatGPT or any of the other AI platforms out there. And so just remember, anything that's coming from artificial intelligence, definitely double and triple check for accuracy. We know that AI doesn't always pull in from things that are accurate. And just one other thing, it doesn't have to be ChatGPT. Canva actually is using AI supported design tools now. And I think it's Sprout Social has AI generated alt text. Things like captions on YouTube are often AI generated. So again, it is kind of everywhere now, and just make sure that you're going through and checking for accuracy. And then finally here, don't forget about accessibility, which again, we're talking about kind of alt text, captions, contrast, things like that. In Canva, there is an accessibility checker that we actually covered just last week in a webinar, and I'll put a link to that in the end as well. So if you're not sure how to use that, you can watch that video. Canva does do some accessibility, but it is by no means complete. And so actually in our next webinar next month on our Share My Screen series, we are going to be covering what you need to do in the social media channels themselves. Facebook, Instagram, those places. What do you need to make your products accessible? If you're not registered for that, we'll share that link too. All right, so in addition to these tools, you also need to think a little bit about the channels and the apps that you're using. Really, there are some major limitations into what each platform, each channel can do. Um, just even in terms of, what's a best practice, something like Instagram is visual first, text secondary, but something like X or Threads is going to be text first and visual secondary. So you need to know what they can and cannot do and what the best practices are. And you also need to know what are the limitations within the software itself. And so the example I'm going to use is Instagram, for instance. There are things that won't work on Instagram if you're using the desktop version. And so you have to use the app version on a mobile device. It's also things like, where is your content going to be usable across those platforms? So if you're on TikTok and Instagram, for instance, you're going to want a vertical format because that's what's going to work on both of those platforms. So it's not only kind of how is your content going to work across platforms, it's how are you going to put it on those platforms in a way that gets the most kind of bang for your buck. All right. And then just the last thing is, and this is a note from Katie, actually, she finds it super helpful to have her graphic design software or whatever she's using. She again uses Canva on her phone. She's using her personal phone to post content to the Prevent Child Injury Instagram, for instance. And so she has that on her phone, her Canva app. So she can download things directly, post them on Instagram, see how they look, and then again, add all of that kind of extra-ness that you can do in platform. Okay, that's just our kind of intro to set the stage. And now let's get into some of the demos. So take it away, Katie.
All right. So the first thing I'm going to walk through is how our team turns text documents like newsletters, blog posts, press releases, reports, journal articles, etc., into a visual that can be used on social media. So I'm going to walk through an example of an Instagram carousel we created for a social media from a newsletter we wrote on open water drowning. So, back in 2022, we put together a toolkit about open water drowning prevention. Our primary audience was parents and caregivers of teens and older children. The toolkit encouraged parents and caregivers to talk to their teens about the importance of taking safety measures while swimming in open water, especially when parents aren't around. So, we wrote 5 key talking points to help parents guide their conversation. So, when our team puts together these kind of documents, we put a lot of time and energy into tailoring the messaging to our audience, leading into the story of why it's important for them to hear and kind of what those key takeaway points are. And there are so many of these long form written content pieces in the public health and health education space. So the hard work has kind of already been done. Usually there are statistics, key points, message tailoring, and links for more information already structured into these documents, but they aren't really built for social media, right? So, as health communicators, we can use our skills to optimize them for social media and make it into a visual, eye-catching, and engaging content to be part of our social media outreach. So, yeah, like I said, we're going to walk through how we turned this newsletter into a carousel post for Instagram. All right. So before getting started, it's important to ask yourself a few questions about your content. So where will this be used and where is this going? So as we know, there are various different channels that you can use for outreach, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, X, TikTok, LinkedIn, or a newsletter or a listserv, and each platform brings a different type of audience and a different type of content. So, that being said, you're not just limited to static graphics either. So you could create a reel, a carousel, a one pager or PDF document, videos, a shortened text social media post. There's a lot of options. So the second question you're going to ask is, who is my audience? So it's important to consider that the audience that this text document was written for might be different than your audience, right? So ask yourself, who are your followers, and who are you trying to reach? And then how will people engage with it? So it's important to consider that, all the different social media platforms kind of call for different types of content, which come with different considerations to take. So on Instagram, users can swipe through an image, like a carousel at their own pace. So maybe, they're going to read that at their own pace. So the amount of text you put on it might be different than um, like a Facebook post where at a gallery you can see it all at once, right? So then a TikTok or an Instagram reel, the information kind of builds on each other, right? They're not looking at it all at once. So think about how much information will you be including in the caption? Are you going to link to more if possible? Um, it's important to note that most social media graphics, the links aren't clickable. So putting like a long URL in an Instagram carousel might not be crazy effective. So if you want to point your audience somewhere to learn more, you could include the link in the caption, or we like to use or create a shorter link that's easy to remember. We use the platform Bitly for your audience to use. So when drafting your content, there's a couple things to consider. Um, when drafting a graphic, we usually start with picking our SACO, or our single overriding communication objective. For the whole toolkit, our SACO was teens are the second most at-risk group for drowning. Talk to them about how to make smart and safe decisions when swimming on their own. So, like I mentioned earlier, we created 5 takeaway bullet points in our newsletter. And when drafting our graphics, we decided to put each takeaway as its own SACO for the graphic, its own takeaway point. So we had pay attention to the weather, choose your spot carefully, listen to your body and know your swimming abilities, and enter the water feet first, and know how to respond to a drowning emergency. So these are all action oriented and serve as a great lead sentence, right? And it's kind of what we want someone who's looking at this graphic to walk away with. If there's more information or context, we like to put kind of a sentence or two beneath this header, but we like to pick like one action oriented top lead sentence at the top. So it's also important to consider, make sure that you're telling a story, right? So when designing the flow of this carousel, we thought about how it would show up on Instagram, how someone's going to swipe through it. So we told the story by putting these points in what we felt was chronological order, or kind of how a teen would experience a day by the water. Okay, so now on to some nitty-gritty design tips. So here's a couple tips that we use as a guide for our graphics. Um, First, as health communicators, we talk a lot about the benefits of positive framing and messaging, and it's important to keep this consistent in visuals. So show your audience what to do, not what not to do. In this graphic, we have 2 teens illustrated entering the water feet first, which was our recommended action, with an unknown hazard, in this case, a drop off, ahead of them. And they should be okay since they're entering feet first. But the opposite would be showing maybe a teen diving into shallow water, with a red X over it, right? Kind of think about what image you're portraying and what they're going to walk away with. So we chose here to show the correct option. So another tip is to pick a style. Sometimes we're limited by the programs we use in our design skills, but I think a polished graphic usually has a consistent style, right? So say I included some rocks or fish in this graphic with like a heavy black outline, or even like a black and white cartoon style, that might look a little out of place. So here we kept everything in a round, like non-outlined style. Then pick a color scheme. So we kept the color scheme consistent across all of our graphics in this suite. It was kind of a combination of blues, and we kind of color picked different accent colors like this. The boy has a blue bathing suit, and then the girl has a kind of reddish pink bathing suit. So we like to use the color dropper tool, which most graphic design softwares have, to kind of keep that consistent. Um, And then pick a consistent font. So it's best practice to try to stick to two fonts maximum in a suite of graphics. It can get kind of busy when you do more than that. So I say keep it consistent. Here we have our header and our body paragraph font, and then the open water swimming safety tips font. So those two different fonts. Um, and then finally, use your logo or co-brand with permission. So in our case, we put these graphics and materials out there in hopes that your organization uses them and co-brands them. So in other cases, you might need to look on an organization's website or ask for explicit permission to do this, but um, that's kind of our rule of thumb with our graphics. We are happy if you do that, but if you're creating it, include your logo and promote your organization, right? So, yeah, that's kind of our philosophy on that. So, some finishing touches. First one, I like to think about what will this look like in channel. So I usually look, like Katrina said, at the content on my phone and draft the post in the app. So especially when it comes to Instagram, because by looking at it on my phone, I can see the layout, the colors, the font sizes, and how that would look to a phone user who's looking at this graphic. So yeah, and like now's your chance to add in stickers, links, tag organizations, all that fun stuff. Um, but yeah, another thing, there's some benefits of including a consistent header. So for these graphics, we had that open water swimming safety tip, and then numbered 1 through 5. So this kind of gives the graphic context, if it's being used on its own. So if tip number 3 is posted on Facebook, someone might see that and know, okay, there's more to the story than just this graphic. Like there's more to know than just this. So yeah, that's a benefit of that. But yeah, then last point, for the end slide, you can't solve the world's problems with one Instagram graphic, but you can tell them where to go to learn more. So, to walk that line of not overwhelming our audience with too much information, we like to include an easy link or a bit.ly to direct people where to go to learn more. So, yeah, here is our end product. As you can see, we have a consistent font, consistent headers, a color scheme, a style. All these details kind of make it look more polished, right? It tells that consistent story. Um, you can kind of see those accent colors we picked out, like the green. Um, and yeah, so that is kind of our process for that. But another example of turning text into a visual is we like to pick a resource to highlight in our monthly newsletter to membership. In this case, we were highlighting a really great resource from the CDC Heads Up program about youth football safety. So we start by writing up a short blurb for our members, give them the like who, what, where, when, why of why we think they'd benefit from checking it out. And then we turn it into an Instagram carousel. So we don't just take that written blurb and pop it into a graphic, right? We try to pick out things like compelling statistics, who would benefit from checking this out, why it's important now, what you'll learn from it. And yeah, we kind of try to make it apparent that this isn't our resource. We're just highlighting it, boosting its visibility, right? Because it's of our audience interest. So it's all about adding to your content bank, optimizing things you've already done, and repurposing your efforts. Last example is, it doesn't always have to be an Instagram carousel. So here are two examples of some other kinds of content. This first one is a Safe Kids Reel walking through a new resource they have about safely passing railroad crossings. So they had an interactive website where you kind of clicked through and learned more information. And they basically took that website and thought, how will we want to present this on Instagram? How can we share this on our Instagram followers and not just put up a story and say, go to this website, and check this out. So it's like the same kind of information, the same visuals, that same consistent um, branding, but just presented in a different way. And then On the right, there's a one pager, a resource from T4CIP about how to use a swim cap made for swimmers with natural hair. So another kind of example of a visual that you could put together. So yeah, I think that wraps up that section. I think Katrina's going to take over about turning graphics and existing resources into carousels and videos.
All right. So Katie, we did have a couple of questions first I just want to touch on. So the first one is, are QR codes okay to use at the end? And the answer is it depends. So the problem with QR codes is that they are mostly useful if you are literally able to like pull out your phone and scan them. And so if you're on social media and you've got a QR code, most of the time you're probably going to be on your phone. Now, there are ways you can, I think iPhone has something like a live reader that you can use. And I'm pretty sure Google has one too, like the Android system, but you have to be a more sophisticated phone user to scan those live in app. So in general, if you're standing in front of a flyer or a poster, or if you're giving a presentation, for instance, and your audience is sitting there and they can pull out their phones, and scan that QR code, that's the best time for a QR code. But for social media, most of the time the QR code is going to be a little more difficult to interact with. And so again, this is where each platform will depend on how you're going to share that more information. Instagram is a little hard because the links, you can't click on them in the post. It's just a little tough. You can on Instagram click on links. You can add clickable links to things like a story, but you can't to a regular post. So again, it kind of really depends, but in general, I would reserve QR codes for times when people can literally pull out their phone and scan it. So if you're seeing on a desktop, that might be okay. But for social media, I think most of the time people are going to be on their phone. So you probably want to find a different way to share that information. And then the second question is, do you need to get specific permission if you're reinventing someone else's materials as you suggested? Yes. So asterisk. So there is something called the fair use doctrine, which we're not going to get into, but basically the idea is that if it's educational materials and you're providing credit or attribution, in general, as long as you're not truly plagiarizing, you're not taking credit for anything, you can. And we at Prevent Child Injury specifically are authorizing this in specific ways, as long as you're not changing the text, because again, we have worked very hard on that. But I'm going to show you some ways that you can actually add some interest in things here in just a second. So, and then there is also a question in the Q&A. Hang on, let me see. Do videos tend to do better than static posts? The answer is yes. And that is why I am going to get into that right now. So I'm going to take over. Let's go ahead and share my screen here. Where is the share? And you're going to get my whole screen. So, okay. So for anybody that's been to my Share My Screen series, this will look a little bit familiar. But basically what I'm going to do is run you through how in Canva you can create posts like this one. And so I'm going to show you two things. One is, so we're using graphics that Katie has already created. So she walked you through how we create these graphics. Now I'm going to show you how you can take these graphics and turn them into either a carousel if they weren't intended to be, or in the next one, I'm going to show you how to make videos out of these as well. So I wanted to show you though my end product so that you can see where we're going. Another note is that I think all of this is available in the free version of Canva. I know the one I'm going to show in a minute is, but I'm pretty sure all of these are as well. So we're in the pro version, but I'm pretty sure it's available in the free one as well. So first thing you're going to do is obviously you're going to have a topic that you want to cover. And so I chose one of our toolkits on Ask Day. It's every June 21st. And so I decided let's go ahead and put together a carousel for Ask Day. Now we have a lot of graphics here, but they weren't intended to be a carousel the way that Katie talked about. We didn't necessarily think about them in that way. So some of them say the same things. And so you got to think about, how are you going to put these together to create that kind of story that Katie talked about? And so what I like to think about when I'm doing this is I like to introduce the problem, tell them why they should care, what they can do about it. And then as Katie said, we always want to direct them out to more information. So You can see we've got a bunch of different sizes on here as well. And so I'm going to create a square Instagram post. And so I'm going to choose to download the Facebook sized ones. And so you can see here, if I clicked on this, you would see this here. This is to our Flickr page. What you want to do then is once you've picked out the size that you want, if you're doing something more vertical, I'll show you in a second. We do have some that are sized better for that, but choose the dimensions that are closest to the size post that you're going to be making. Then you want to download these in the original size. That is really important. Do it in the original size. So I've already done all of this. I've downloaded these three because these are the three that I'm going to put into a carousel. And you can see I've actually just dumped them over here into a folder for ease's sake. Then what I did in order to round out some of this story, I didn't think that these graphics were telling the complete story. So I took advantage of the existing resources. So what I'm looking for is some of the reason why we're talking about this. And so when I'm thinking about that, one place I will always go is I will look for a news article because normally I can pull a quote from a news article that shares why we're talking about this. And so for this one, I went ahead and I looked at this article written by a mom of, unfortunately, she lost her son to an unintentional shooting because of lack of gun storage. And so she wrote this article about her experience. And so what I did is I kind of went through it and I read and I found a quote that looked very similar to the type of thing that we were talking about in the toolkit. So it's right here. We ask if about dogs, things like that. This is all backing up what we are talking about in this toolkit. And so I decided that that was going to be probably a good quote to use for my carousel. So here's how I did it. Just open up a brand new Instagram post. So this is just a plain Instagram post. And so then again, I've already got them saved here for ease's sake, but you're going to go ahead and just make a page for each one of your graphics. And then I know I'm going to add a quote page. So I'm going to add a second one here. And then as Katie said, we always want an end slide as well. So our total carousel is going to be 5 pages long. Now what I like to do is think about what do I want for my cover image? And so thinking about these 3 images, the reason I chose this one is I thought, first of all, it's got a nice blank space for something I can put about Ask Day, but it also had a nice concrete way of getting into this subject. It's got an easy to read title, subhead, all of that. But it was also that, again, it had that nice section here where I could add some text to help introduce my topic. So I could just go ahead and add text and say Ask Day, oops, and then we'll do it like this, is June 21st. And we'll move this up. Maybe. There we go. And so you can just add some text here. And again, move it to a correct position. Whoops. Sometimes it's easiest to lock these on the background. There we go. And so, yeah, you would just add your text in. And then as Katie said, oops, spelled June correctly too. You might change the color, you might change the font to match whatever other fonts you're using. But again, you can just add some text. And we're going to come back and change the background in just a second. But this one's going to be your cover page too. So let's move that to the front. Now I'm going to think about, I've introduced the topic. Now I want to say, why should they care? And so here's where I'm going to do a quote graphic. So once again, I had a quote right here from this article. So I've already copied it. I can do this and then go to copy. And now I'm going to come back. And here is where I'm going to you can design your own template if you want, or I just searched for quote in the Canva templates, to be honest. And then chose one that would fit the length of quote I have. So again, I've got a lot of text here, so some of these aren't going to be that great. This one I thought was nice and clean, fit with kind of the rest of my flow. And again, it was something where I could fit the whole quote in. And then we're going to reduce this font size. I don't know why it's not reducing. There we go. We can just reduce that down so that it fits in this section. Now, the other thing you want to do to finish adapting this is come back and grab the person who said it. So this is Ashlyn Melton. And whoops. And we're going to copy, come back, add this here. And then instead of this at really great site, this is where I'm going to put my attribution. And so this is where I say, I think it's okay to do this as long as I'm providing attribution. We're not making money off of this. We're sharing this for educational purposes. So as long as I can quote back or cite back to where I'm going, I think this is okay. Maybe it's check with your organization if they have any limitations on this type of thing, but this is something that we do. And so I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to come put that in here so people know. Oops, we'll take out the @ sign. So people know where I got this information. Okay, next page. Now I'm going to think about which one do I want next. And so I've got these 2 pages here. I've got the kind of before dropping your child off and the talk to your child. In terms of that chronological idea that Katie was talking about, I actually think we've got the introduction of the idea. We've got a quote about why it matters. Now I think we do the what to do slide. And so again, I'm just going to bump this up to make it the full width. And we're going to come back and add a background in a second, but I'm going to do the same thing for this one. Okay. And now let's add some backgrounds because they just don't pop very much. So like Katie said, we're a big fan of the eyedropper tool around here. And this is how you can come grab that color. So if you click on the little plus over here and then come down and grab your eyedropper, this is the eyedropper tool. And then you can hover over different spots on your image and get that same color, right? And then it will change it to that color. So I think that's a pretty nice color for that background. So we're going to stick with that. Now, I want to go back to the beginning because I want to show you this background, the same color. So this is now in here, this color. So you can change that background, but I personally don't think that looks very good. And so I'm going to want a different color for this. However, there's no color on this graphic that I like. So here's where you have to get a little bit of messing around with things. So in order to get that color from another graphic, you have to make it a background or a color in somewhere else in the design. So this gray, for instance, is probably one that I'm going to grab. So once again, I'm going to choose my background here, come over, get your eyedropper tool. And this time we're going to come get this gray. So click on that. And now I've got this gray background. And so I can go back to the beginning. And then now this gray will show up here and I can change it to gray. So now this page is done. I do want to come back here and edit this page because this blue is not the same blue as the rest of blue in our document. And the same thing, this beige color doesn't show up anywhere else either. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to the gray. And so now, all right, that one's done. This one you could change back to the blue if you want to. I'm going to leave it like that. And now all you need is an end slide. And so you can go ahead, pick a color, and then you might add text, like learn more about Ask They at, www.link.com. And so then you can either, again, add your logo. I went in and I think I searched for answering question. Yep, that's what I searched for to find this icon that I liked. So once you get all that information in, then, get it all lined up, get all the colors you like. Now, run your accessibility checker. This is an important step to check to make sure that we're getting as far as accessibility as we can. So you're going to go to File and then Accessibility and then check Design Accessibility. And so this will show up with, again, if you have the font's too small, if your contrast is bad, and then we're actually going to skip alternative text because if you're using this in any social media channel, you'll need to add that separately anyway. But if there was a contrast issue, it would show up here. So that's just how you can create, again, a complete carousel based on the graphics that we have on the toolkit page. Just if you don't know, then you would go to share just real quick and then export that as a PNG. So there is one other thing I wanted to show right here, which is that you technically can export these as videos too, depending on what your dimensions, like the needs are for your dimensions. So if you take this and export it as a video, Canva will just assign a 5-second kind of look at each slide. So you would get a 25-second video with 5 seconds on each slide if you exported this as a video. But I want to show you how you can, jazz it up a little bit and create a more compelling video. And so I'm going to switch now to how to create a vertical video. So this is useful again as Reels and stories on Instagram. You can use this on TikTok. You can use the vertical format just about anywhere. However, this process does also work if you wanted that horizontal format. So YouTube, for instance, is the horizontal format. And so again, this process works with any dimension. I'm just going to show you in the vertical format because I think that's where a lot of the action is. And so let me just show you real quick what I'm talking about. Okay, so that was just the quick example of what I did here in Canva. So let me show you how I did this. All right, so the first thing I did was move. Open up a new vertical video, okay? And so again, you can do this in just about any dimension, but again, I'm doing a vertical video. So I opened up, it's actually, I'm sorry, it's a story. It's a new story under Canva, not a vertical video. So this is a story, an Instagram story. All right, process is very similar to before. I simply went to a toolkit page and found, a topic that I wanted to do. We're going to do food related choking today. And here are the options for our graphics. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use all of these images. And I downloaded them in the vertical format because that's what the dimensions are for the products that I'm making. But I also downloaded the header graphic, even though it's not in the same dimension, because I'm going to show you how you can use it to create more content. So I've already downloaded those. And again, you can see those over here to the right. Okay, so back to my post. But once again, I've got a brand new story here. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm just going to give each one its own page. And then I'm going to organize it in the way that it showed up here. Okay, so this was the first one. Oops. This was the last one. And then let's see. So then cut this on the second one. And there we go. So this is the order that it was across the toolkit page. And that's the same order that I think it makes sense in. So that's why I did that. Now, for the ones that are already the same dimensions as you're using, you can actually just right click and go to set image as background, and it will just pop it right to the background. And I think that's the easiest way to do this, in my opinion, is to set this as the background. Because what we're going to do is we're going to add some animations and transitions to these to make it into a video. But let's look at our cover image first. So let me show you what I did to create the cover image. Now, this dimension obviously does not work in the vertical format. So what I did was I cropped this down. You just grab this and you can crop it down to just this size. All right, so now it's just the box. And I'm going to put it up here. I think I made it a little bit bigger. This is a way you can do this with, again, out changing the text. And this is just an, again, easy way to create this front image. Now, as Katie said, this is the drawn format, and very often I would stick with that kind of illustrated format for my front image here. But I will be honest, I took a look at the graphic images and I just didn't like any of them. And the other thing is, for choking safety, we have to be really cautious about what we're showing the kids eating. Obviously, we're in safety. We want to make sure we're always following best practices. And so a lot of these are just not going to work. And so I decided to take a look at the photos. One easy way to do this if you're doing vertical is to sort it also by vertical. It will show you which ones will meet your dimensions. And then again, just start looking around to see, is there a photo that shows correct behavior? But I also look for ones that will go with my, if I've already got an image. So like this is kind of like a pumpkin-y kind of flavor, or I'm sorry, flavor, a pumpkin-y kind of color. And so I'll look for something that might look good with that. And so I ended up, I think, choosing this photo right here. It's also a free photo. So again, available to everybody. But because it's the right image, the right size, I can go ahead and set that image to background. And so then we can move this around wherever it needs to go. But here's where we're going to add the visual interest is go ahead and select the element that you're going to then animate. Okay, we're going to add some animation to this element to add some visual interest. So here's your animate tab. And you can kind of just click through and see, which ones do you like? You can try different types. There's all different types of animations here. I think I ended up on this one for the sketch animation. And so again, go ahead and pick an animation. And now we're going to go through and we're going to add animation, either an animated element or an animation to each of these slides. So for this one, I'll be honest, I didn't see a whole lot. There wasn't a whole lot I could think of to add animation for this slide. So you can always add an animated arrow to something to draw attention, or again, a check mark, things like that. And so I decided for this one, I wanted to add some animated arrows. And I'm not sure where my orange arrows are. Let's try that one again. Oh, because it's stuck on vertical. Don't forget to take that off. Yep, there we go.
I think they're right there. Oh,
Can you see it? Nope, there it is.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I couldn't see it. Okay, sorry. Take off your vertical thing too. There we go. And so then you can just add this kind of right in there. And there you've got an animated element. For the next slide, you can do something similar. I was trying to think about what could I add for animation for this one. There might be steam, coming out of the cup. So I searched for steam and then resized it. Obviously, we don't want anything that's going to be too distracting, simply because we want them to be able to read the text. And then I thought we could add, I originally was thinking the word yum out of the child, but that didn't work as well. So I ended up just using an emoji, really. I guess it is. I'm putting that up there. But then I animated it. And I think on this one, I chose rise. And I wanted to show you this one because you can change the settings to do it on enter, on exit, or on both. I had it just on enter. And then I slowed it way down so that it was a slower kind of rise, right? So again, easy ways to move things around to change that animation. All right, then the next one I wanted to show is how you can create a click even if you don't have the individual elements. So the way I did this one was I first put in a shape and I matched it, I color matched it to my blue background and covered up my element. And then I locked it to the back. Now what I'm going to do is go back to my uploads, pull this photo again, which is right here, this graphic, and then crop this down to just the element itself. And I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. And now what you want to do is slide it around a little bit to make sure it doesn't overlap with, your other element at all, because then we can go up and click animate. And I think I used the pulse one for this one because I thought that might be a nice one. So check to make sure that the box doesn't go overlapping the kid's head. Sometimes it does that if it's in the wrong spot. So just check to make sure it doesn't interfere with any of the other elements. But you can, again, that pulse element, you can change the speed of and that kind of thing. So finally, for this last slide, one we do often for this one is just add an animated mouse click. And so just take that mouse click. Oops, that's upload written elements. Let's go for mouse click. And all right, and there's my mouse. So, and then I just added this. Like, it's a little hard. You got to hold it for a second and line it up. But there you go. All right, so as you can see, you now have animations on, we've added animations to each one. However, there's one more thing I want to do, and that's add transitions. And so if you see in between here, I should note this. So this is your scroll view. This is how it might look. You want to make sure you're in thumbnail view because then you'll see these gaps between the pages. And so if you add transitions between the pages, you can create different effects for your video. And so this is again, just kind of clicking through and seeing, what you're kind of interested in. Now, I chose this one. I want to choose this one because I want to show you another quick tip to avoid this very issue. You see how those arrows slide in? Wanted to show you something else to fix this issue. So if you click on duration, this interface pops up. And so I don't like that. I like the flow transition, but I don't like that arrow popping up. So somewhere in the middle of this, I'm just going to click here in the middle, and I'm going to right click and go to split page. And then on the first part of this one, come in and just delete your arrows. And so now you can go back and your transition won't have those arrows in it. So you can always just split the clip and then take out the piece that you don't want from the first section. Now I'm going to go through and just add some transitions in between the rest of these pages. We'll just pick these just to get this finished up here. But again, you can kind of mix and match to whatever works best for you. I also think it's cool in these cases to add some audio. And so I think this one I had searched for, acoustic guitar. You can add just a simple thing down there, pull it back to the beginning. And now you would have a complete video based on the graphics in our toolkit. The way that, just real quick, oops. Sorry, I hit the wrong thing. Sorry about that. Wanted to show also real quick how to export this. If you hit share, you want to go to download and then MP4. You want to generate this as a video. Okay. I know that was a lot thrown at you. And so Katie's got one more piece and then we'll wrap up and take some questions.
Yes. All right. Give me a second. All right, there we go. All right, so last thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to capitalize on current events happening in local, national, and global news and incorporating them into your social media strategy. So I'm going to walk through another case study example of a post we shared on our Instagram and X handles. Back in June, Gordon Ramsay, a well-known British celebrity chef, got into a pretty severe road accident on his bicycle. He shared a video on social media recounting this accident, claiming that he was lucky to be alive and how important it was that he was wearing his helmet. So, and for the viewers, how important it is that they wear their bike helmet. So this is injury prevention in the wild and right up our alley, right? So I made a 2-slide post, one with his quote, including his message to kids, and one with a screenshot from the video. In our caption, I summarized what we knew from the article, included his quote, and then included some information from our bicycle toolkit about bike safety and plugged the toolkit as well. So in these scenarios, our account is a place where parents and caregivers might look for more information. So now that the importance of bike helmets is topical, where do I go to learn more? What should I do? So our goal was to answer that question and be a present figure in this discussion that Gordon already started. So we put together this social media post. Um, how do you include this kind of stuff in your social media content? I think first, be on the lookout in local, national, and global news for stories that relate to your cause. Try setting a Google alert for keywords related to your work, or make an effort to keep a pulse on larger organizations in your sphere. This is a part of our, oops, own social media strategy. So we think it's important. And as a public health program, our goal is to educate and get people talking about safety. So if people are already talking about it, we need to get in there too. So we see it as a way to connect your organization to the current social media trends or news cycle in a way that makes sense. Um, Couple notes on strategy and logistics about these posts. When it comes to rolling these out, timing is definitely key. Don't wait too long. Sometimes the approval processes are out of our hands, but make an effort to get it out as soon as possible with proofreading. You can get creative and use your network. Like we did, take screenshots, use a direct quote, incorporate your own content. You can tag relevant organizations or figures like we tagged Gordon or news outlets to get your content out there. Because you never know what could take off in these kind of things. So, yeah, that was just a quick um, summary of how we approach those kind of things. So I think that wraps up our content for today. So we're happy to keep the conversation going and take any questions or comments from the chat.
We do have a lot of questions here, Katie. I'm gonna just start here at the beginning on the Q&A. So what are your tips to finding high quality free graphics like the people? I will say that these are mostly from our Canva Pro account, which we have access to as a nonprofit. So if you're a nonprofit or an educator, I think you can access the Pro account for free. I will also say it's not that expensive. And so this is not a promotion, this is not sponsored by Canva in any way, but we really do think it's valuable for the money. There are other services out there. And I'm actually going to drop a link in the chat to, we have a list of photo libraries, icon libraries, things like that over at Certsy. And so you might be able to find some things there. But generally, we are pulling a lot from Canva itself. Noun Project we use. Katie, anything else that you're pulling from?
I think there are some websites like Unsplash and
Right.
I'm sure yeah, th those are on the Cersei website, but
Okay. I just didn't know if there was any other ones that you were pulling from the moment. Do you recommend the illustration format over real people? Does one do better engagement than the other? So there's actually some interesting research on this. Basically, the research says that if the photo is not exactly what the person expects to see, it won't resonate as well. And so there's some evidence that illustrations will resonate more broadly. I mean, my guess is that I think when it's a real photo, it's a little harder to kind of imagine yourself in it if it's not your lived experience or what your life is like, right? So it really depends. If you've got the photos that are right for your audience and right for your message and things like that, we use a lot of photos. Like it's not it's actually more of maybe what we have access to at times, because again, they can go either way. But there is a little bit of evidence to suggest that again, illustrations might resonate with a broader audience. So, this is where we'd love to do, more testing and focus grouping and things like that. But, unfortunately, we just don't have as many answers on those types of things as we'd like. Okay. Best time frame to report on a news article. Well, so what I did was if it depends on, I think, whether or not it's breaking news. So Katie, and maybe you want to talk about this a little bit. I used a news article for something that comes up every year. So I used that in a different way. So Katie, I don't know if you want to talk about maybe a time frame that you would use.
yeah, I think for like breaking news stories, kind of talking about what we did, I think it's probably, while it's still topical, is like while when you want to post it, I think, falling in the trap of getting something out kind of after the fact can be, probably have an impact, but I think you lose the um like the amount of impact it can have. I think, as if you get it in there when it's more topical, I think it's probably to your advantage. Um, but yeah.
All right. Then we've got a bunch of stuff here in the chat too. So, okay. Would you recommend using SCRL for informational Instagram posts? Katie, have you used it? I have not.
I'm not
I think
familiar.
you're talking about the seamless post. I think that's what that means. We have not used the seamless posting feature, as far as I know. I think I don't see any drawback to it necessarily. I think you would have to do it very thoughtfully. But honestly, I think all of these options are useful. We just have to be thoughtful about thinking again about that story, right? How are we walking them through the information? And so I do think that seamless idea could be really interesting. We just have not gotten into it yet. Best practice on number of pages and images. Your examples show 5. Is that the best? Katie, do we have an actual best practice on that, or is that just kind of our standard?
Um, don't think we have like a best practice. We've definitely done more than 5.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think,
I think it really depends. I also think about, what do I engage with? Am I going to scroll through more than 5, depending on the content? Maybe, but in most cases, what we're talking about, I'm not sure that longer is always better, right? It could be that maybe you do, more frequent posts rather than one big long one.
yeah.
I did want to just verbal. Oh, sorry. Did you have something else?
I was just going to add too, thinking about what's on the slides is important. Like if you have 8 single point slides and you're like flipping through each point, I think that's okay. But if you
Sure.
have 8 blocks of paragraph text, I think, you know, the person's going to get fatigued a little bit reading through that.
Yeah.
So,
Good point. Yeah. I did just want to verbalize this for the recording. Someone commented that news outlets can and often do copyright their content. I'd recommend being careful with copying and pasting quotes or any portions of articles. Absolutely true. So full disclosure, I am a former lawyer, and so I do fully endorse this. Again, I use it sparingly and only if I can give full attribution. I will never use it if I am not giving a full link out to wherever I'm getting it from. I personally believe that this falls under what's called the fair use doctrine. We are doing this for educational purposes. It's non-commercial, things like that. So I personally believe it, but it is something to consider for sure. If you don't want to take that risk, do not take that risk, right? Again, it kind of, I think, also depends on each circumstance. Um, I will also though say that so as prevent child injury, you might have noticed that our photo licenses technically say that you should be giving attribution if you're remixing or doing anything with our content. And so if you noticed, we still had our logo, even on all this stuff I use, our logo is on it. And that's enough as long as you're not taking our logo off of it, changing the language, because again, that's gone through many, many rounds of approval processes and really, really in-depth choices about that language. So as long as you're not, again, changing the meaning of our documents, we're fine with all of this remixing, but do definitely be careful with anything copyrighted and anything that, and again, just don't plagiarize, don't rip stuff off, provide attribution. Okay, do you try to make all Instagram posts follow one theme? Is that a good thing to do? Katie, you want to take that one?
yeah, I think for its singular standalone carousel post, I think it's nice and polished to give it a theme and give it a consistent look while you flip through it. I was reading this question and I wasn't sure if we were talking about that or like an Instagram profile, like giving your whole profile a theme. Um, to answer that question, I think that's up to your brand and organization and your goals. But I know our philosophy, we consider ourselves, we use the words like a coalition of professionals all together. We're highlighting other organizations. So if you notice on our social media, we don't have like a consistent branding guideline for every single post that some organizations might have. So that's our strategy. But
Yep. Okay, so next one, we'll try to get through these. Did you post that story video as a story or as a reel? Are there differences in the Canva design? So no, there's not differences in the Canva design depending on how it's exported. The reason I did it the way I did is because I think it's easier to edit based on when you're pulling in images. you can create the video, you can create it as a video, but I think it's easier to do this editing and animation things as a story and then export it as a video. But you could honestly export it as the individual files as well and do it as a carousel too. And so just a quick note though, the difference between a reel and a story is that a reel will live forever on your page, right? So it's like a regular post. You would just click to a different section and your reels all show up. Stories will disappear after 24 hours. So very often it could be that you're posting the video to the reel, you're as a reel, but then sharing it to your stories so that it helps promote it, right? But you're probably going to actually post it as a reel. Or again, you could do it for TikTok, you could do it for a bunch of different things. But again, not a whole lot difference in the design itself. It's just how you export it. That's the only difference. Okay. Is there a way to repurpose X posts for Instagram? We have some great posts for X chats, but not sure how to convert them. I'll just take this one real quick. So screenshot them. I follow a number of accounts that are like, it's like things around food that are just like tweets about food. There's a bunch of accounts out there that are just screenshots of other people's social media. So I'm fine. I think it's fine to just screenshot it and share it. You can also use Katie's method, though, of taking that text and maybe visualizing it in a different way. But I mean, I see screenshots over on the other channels all the time. So I think it's okay to do that.
Yeah, I even think there's a feature where you can share an X post to a story. So you can, I've seen that before. We've done it where you share it to your Instagram story. And I don't know, that's another option.
Yep. And then a couple more here. To use the animations, do you have to upload your social media directly from Canva? No, you can export it. So this is where actually we'd love for you to attend the social media accessibility training that we're hosting through Startsy next month, because we will show you once you've generated it from Canva. So you're going to export it as like an image files, like a JPEG or a PNG, or as a movie or a video, right? But then you're going to have to upload it then to your channels. And so we're going to show you next month how to add accessibility once you've uploaded it to your channel. So no, go ahead and export it. Or you can actually connect your Canva account to your social media, but you don't do that, right, Katie? You download stuff,
Yeah.
right? So you can actually connect them and go straight there. But yeah, Katie does the download version and then upload it to the platform. And so no, the animations, that's all done in Canva. And so when you export, it's all done. And then one more quick thing. Should you be posting multiple times a day? Depends on your audience and your channel. The things that are super quick, like X and Threads, yes. Instagram, no. You actually only need to do it like a couple of times a week. Facebook is the same, maybe 3 to 5 times a week. So there are a lot of tips out there for best practices for posting. So you can do a quick search for those. All right. Katie, anything else that you want to add? We're at time. Anything else that you think we missed or you need to add?
I don't think so. I think Katrina sent a link to join Prevent Child Injury in the chat. Definitely join if you want to stay up to date with what we're doing. We will upload this webinar to YouTube on our YouTube channel and send it out once it's uploaded. But yeah, I think that's all I got.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for spending the last hour with us.